The wedding hall sparkled like a scene from a fairy tale. White roses draped across golden railings, crystal chandeliers casting soft glows over polished marble floors, and the gentle murmur of expensive perfume mingling with the laughter of the wealthy. Guests floated through the room in fine suits and shimmering dresses, their lives as glossy as the magazines they often appeared in. And then, there was Angela. She stood at the edge of this grand scene, dressed not in silk or satin, but in a gray cleaning uniform faded from too many washes. Her gloves had lost their color long ago, and her shoes were worn thin from years of endless walking across these floors. She wasn't here as a guest, nor as someone to be celebrated. She was here to make sure the glasses gleamed, the tables shone, and that no one ever noticed her presence, except perhaps to blame her if something was out of place. For nearly 7 years, this mansion had been her workplace. She arrived before dawn and left when the world outside had already gone dark. There was no applause for her work, no warm words for her tired back, only the faint comfort of a paycheck that barely kept food on the table for her 2 children. 2 children, growing far too fast for the clothes she could afford, their school fees hanging like a cloud over her head. Just this morning, she had found yet another warning slip from her landlord. Rent overdue. Again. She folded it quietly into her pocket and went to work, because what else could she do? And yet, there was one reason Angela still clung to this job with a fragile grip of hope. His name was Jonathan Steele, the groom. Unlike the others, Jonathan remembered her name. He asked about her children. He offered her a smile when no one else even looked her way. He treated her not as a shadow, but as a person. And so, when she polished the floor that morning and saw him, tall and full of joy, preparing to marry a woman he clearly adored, she felt a faint, distant happiness for him. After all, kindness deserved happiness. But then, the sound that changed everything. Angela was carrying a tray of freshly pressed linens down the corridor when laughter spilled from the bridal suite. At first, she walked past, because her life had taught her to keep her head down, to be invisible. But something in that laughter stopped her. It wasn't the soft, nervous giggle of a bride awaiting her vows. It was sharp, cruel. A pause. Through the slightly ajar door, voices floated out. Clara's voice, the bride-to-be, dripping with scorn. "I don't love him," Clara said with a smirk in her tone. "I love his money. After the wedding, he'll give me everything I want. And once it's all secure, well, I know exactly who I'll really be with." The room erupted in snickers. Bridesmaids whispered, exchanging knowing looks. Angela's breath caught. Her grip on the tray tightened until her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of shock and a sick, rising anger. This wasn't just gossip. It was a confession. Betrayal. Jonathan, who always greeted her kindly, Jonathan, who had built this whole day on love and trust, was about to walk straight into a trap. Her mind spun. "No one will believe you," the thought hissed. She remembered how, years ago, she was accused of stealing a guest's jewelry, only for it to be found under a chair a week later. No one apologized. No one cared. Another time, she tried to warn her boss about a guest behaving badly, and they brushed her aside. "Don't start trouble, Angela. People like you can't afford it." People like her. Invisible people. She could walk away. Pretend she hadn't heard. Keep her job. Pay her rent, maybe. But as she walked away from that door, her mother's words from long ago whispered in her heart. "Our work may be invisible, but our truth never is. One day you will face a choice. Speak and risk. Or stay silent and carry the weight forever." Angela stopped in the empty hallway. Her hands trembled. The music from the wedding hall drifted faintly through the walls now. Guests were gathering, the ceremony minutes away. Clara would walk down that aisle in white, smiling like an angel while hiding the heart of a deceiver. Angela's throat tightened. Her chest felt heavy. Could she really do it? Could she ruin this day, not to hurt but to save? For the first time in years, she felt her fear battling something stronger. A sense of duty, of justice. Jonathan didn't deserve this. Her children didn't deserve a mother who stood by while a good man was tricked. She closed her eyes, and in the dark behind her lids, she saw her children's faces. What lesson would they learn if their mother chose silence? The answer came heavy but clear. She couldn't stay silent. And so, as the music swelled and the guests settled into their seats, Angela took a breath that felt like her first in years. Her steps were small, but they carried the weight of a storm. The moment was coming. The moment that would change everything. The music swelled like a dream as Clara floated down the aisle. Her gown shimmered like a waterfall of pearls, her veil catching the light with every step. Guests turned their heads, sighing in admiration. The hall glowed with warmth, but to Angela, standing in the shadows, it felt cold, like a play where she alone knew the ending. Jonathan stood at the altar, his smile so full of trust it made Angela's heart ache. He looked at Clara the way a man looks when he believes he has found his forever. Every fiber of Angela's being screamed at her to let it go, to let this moment pass and return to her quiet, invisible life. But then Clara glanced at him, just a flicker in her eyes, a tiny, careless smirk, and Angela knew. There was no love there, only calculation. Her mother's voice whispered again, "Speak and risk, or stay silent and carry the weight forever." Angela felt her hands tremble. Her palms were slick inside her gloves. She knew what would come if she stepped forward. The whispers, the accusations, the stares that would burn through her like fire. She would be called a liar, a jealous maid, a troublemaker. She might lose her job. She might lose the fragile roof over her children's heads. But she also knew what would come if she said nothing. A kind man would walk into a prison disguised as a marriage. His trust would be betrayed. His heart would break quietly, alone. The music slowed. The priest raised his hands. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Angela's breath came in shallow bursts. Her knees felt weak. But her voice, though trembling, rose above the music. "Stop the wedding." The words ripped through the hall like a storm tearing open a calm sea. Gasps echoed. Heads whipped around. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Jonathan blinked. His smile faltered. "Angela," he said, his voice low, confused. Clara's face twisted, her perfect mask cracking for a fraction of a second before she forced a smile. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Angela stood in the aisle, a simple maid surrounded by silks and diamonds. Every eye bore down on her. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned the music. "I am sorry," she said, her voice trembling yet steady enough to carry across the hall, "but I cannot let this happen without the truth being told." The whispers began, like snakes slithering through the rows. The guests shifted, watching, waiting for her to stumble. Angela lifted her chin. "I overheard something this morning. The bride, Clara, she said she doesn't love you, Jonathan. She said she loves your money. She laughed about deceiving you. She even spoke of another man waiting for her once this is all secure." The hall erupted. Gasps, murmurs, the sound of people twisting in their seats. Clara's eyes flared. "She's lying," she snapped. "She's the cleaning staff. Why would anyone believe her?" Jonathan's face turned pale. His hands clenched at his sides. "Is this true?" he asked softly, not looking at Clara, not yet. His eyes were locked on Angela. Angela swallowed hard. "I gain nothing by this," she whispered, her voice breaking with the weight of it all. "If I stayed silent, I would keep my job. I would feed my children. I would go home and sleep tonight without fear. But I have worked here 7 years, Jonathan. I have never stolen. Have never lied. I have never betrayed your trust, until today, when silence would have been the betrayal." The room went still. Clara's voice rose, high and shrill. "She's jealous. She's trying to ruin this day because she wants what I have." But the more she spoke, the more her mask slipped. Her desperation clung to the air like smoke. Jonathan finally turned to her. His voice was quiet, but the whole hall could hear. "Is it true, Clara?" Clara stammered. Her hands fidgeted with her bouquet. "Of course not. She's nothing. Why would you even listen to her?" But Jonathan's face had changed. The warmth was gone. Only a deep, cold ache remained, an ache born of betrayal. The guests felt it too. Some lowered their eyes. Others shook their heads. Then it happened, the moment Clara's facade broke completely. Her bridesmaid tried to hush her, but Clara snapped. "So what if I said it? He's rich. He'll get over it." The hall fell silent. That single sentence was enough. Jonathan's shoulders stiffened. His jaw tightened. "This wedding," he said quietly, "is over." The music stopped. The whispers turned to a tide of shock. Some guests gasped in relief. Others sat frozen, their champagne glasses trembling. Clara's face drained of color. "You can't do this to me," she screamed, but her voice was lost beneath the murmur of 100 watching eyes. She fled down the aisle, her veil tearing against a pew as she passed. Her bridesmaids scattered behind her like startled birds. Angela stood there, still trembling, her heart hammering in her chest. She expected anger, dismissal, maybe even the word fired to follow her out the door. But Jonathan walked toward her slowly. He stopped just a few feet away. His voice was low, heavy, but not cruel. "You risked everything to save me," he said. "I will not forget this." For a moment the hall was quiet. No applause, no cheers. Just the quiet recognition of courage. Angela lowered her head. "I only did what was right," she murmured. But inside her chest, something uncoiled. Something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't pride. It was freedom. The grand wedding hall, once filled with laughter and music, now echoed with whispers of disbelief. The guests began to leave, their fine shoes clicking against the marble floors. The chandeliers still shone, the roses still perfumed the air, but the magic was gone, replaced by the quiet aftermath of truth. Angela slipped into the hallway, clutching her faded gloves. Her heart was still racing. She had done it, spoken when the world wanted her silent. But now came the part she feared, the price. She hurried to the back exit, hoping to leave before anyone stopped her. She needed to get home to her children, to figure out how to explain if she had just lost the job that fed them. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door. "Angela!" The voice stopped her. It was Jonathan. He stepped into the hallway, no longer the beaming groom, but a man stripped bare, hurt, tired yet steady. His tie hung loose. His hands still shook from the storm that had just passed. She turned slowly. "Sir, I didn't mean to cause a scene. You saved me," he interrupted gently. "Do you understand that?" Angela shook her head. "I don't know if anyone will see it that way." Jonathan stepped closer. "I do. And my opinion is the one that matters." For the first time in years she felt seen, not as a shadow, not as a maid, but as a person who mattered. The days that followed were filled with rumors. Some said Angela was a hero. Others called her a troublemaker. Clara vanished from the city, her plans ruined. The wedding that never was became a tale whispered over dinner tables and in quiet corners of the mansion. But for Angela, life went on. She still woke early. She still packed school lunches. Only now, when she walked the halls, people nodded instead of looking through her. There was respect in their eyes. Quiet but real. Jonathan did not forget his promise. One rainy afternoon, he called her into his office. The same office where she had once polished the silver without being noticed. Now he asked her to sit. "You've worked here for 7 years," he said. 7 years of loyalty, of honesty, of doing more than anyone ever asked. "I want to give you something back." Angela shook her head. "I didn't do it for a reward." "I know," Jonathan said. "That's why you deserve one." He handed her an envelope. Inside was more than she had ever seen. A sum that could pay her rent for years, clear her debts, and send her children to school without fear. Her hands covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. I can't accept this." "You can," Jonathan said with a small smile. "Because sometimes doing the right thing should not cost you everything." Months passed. Angela no longer felt like the invisible woman in the corner. Her children wore shoes that fit. The landlord stopped knocking. She even began saving a little, something she had never thought possible. And Jonathan, he healed slowly. Heartbreak left its scars, but he moved forward wiser, kinder, and strangely grateful. Because in losing a false love, he had gained a true friend. On a quiet Sunday morning, Angela stood by the window with her children, watching the sun rise. She thought of that day, the music, the whispers, the fear that almost silenced her. Sometimes, she whispered to herself, the bravest thing is to speak when no one expects you to. Her children hugged her legs, asking her to tell the story again, the one about the wedding that didn't happen. And she smiled because now, when she told it, she didn't feel like a servant telling someone else's tale. She felt like the hero in her own. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little courage today, and subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us. One voice, even a quiet one, can change everything.